Hi, everyone. May peace be on you all, and welcome to my special interview segment that I call The Whole Muslim. And this interview segment, it's suddenly just popped into my head that a lot of times people don't see Muslims in an entire way and also don't realize how different we are. And that's why I was like, I'm here. Let's see if I can change some perceptions. And so I decided to do a series of interviews with some very unusual stories from very extraordinary Muslims. And my first guest is Zaakirah Muhammad. She is a African-American Muslim. She is a cancer survivor. She is a professional photographer, and she's a published author, and she's only 28 years old. How are you, Zaakirah? It's so wonderful to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Saida.
So before we start with anything else, I read your book, Seeing Life Through a Different Lens. I hope I'm remembering it correctly.
Yep, that's it.
That's it. And your story is so extraordinary, Zaakirah. So we're going to start at the beginning of your book. And the beginning of your book is the beginning of your life. And it's written so beautifully. And here's the thing. That's the extraordinary thing about your book. It's not an autobiography per se. It's a biography / autobiography because it has parts that are written by you and parts that are actually taken from your mother's blog about her experience with you when you were just a baby. And please tell my audience, what is it that she discovered when you were only 6 months old?
Yes. So actually, the older I get and the more stories that come out from my mom, it actually started before that. And she kind of briefly mentioned that in the book. But my mom was an older mom, per se. And so I was the youngest. I'm the youngest. She got, married to my dad and they wanted to have a child, right? And so it was, the last chance right before that last age
Right.
Before it's like, okay, I don't think you can have kids anymore. So she was blessed to have me, but
Yes.
It wasn't an easy pregnancy. But it also wasn't an easy, let's say, now the childbirth was easy because she said I came out in just 6 minutes.
Oh, wow.
But the first 3 months were kind of challenging. First of all, I was prematurely born. I was born almost 6 weeks early. I was born on December 20, and I was supposed to be born on January 13th. So first, I was a premature baby.
Oh, wow.
And then she observed some things going on with my eye, even as I was leaving the NICU, the neonatal intensive unit.
Right.
And so at 3 months, actually, it's when she first spotted this white glow in my right eye. And at first, she didn't know what that was. She caught it, in the sunlight. We were living in sunny South Florida. She caught it in the sunlight and was like, what was that? Kind of like if you see something really fast and you're like, not sure what that was. And then it happened again. And this time she was able to take a photograph of it. Right. And it showed up in the photograph. And she showed me that photograph because you also see in the book, for those who are listening, I come in at one point when I'm young wondering if I've always been this way, which
Yes.
I'll talk more about that. So she took a picture of it, and when the photo printed, because this was the day of the convenience store, take a picture, get your photos a week later. So she sees the photo, and there's a white glow in my right eye, and one eye has the red dot, and the other eye has the white dot. So she had never seen that before. She asked coworkers, she asked family, then she finally went to my pediatrician at that time, who said, oh, it's nothing to worry about. You're just a new mom. Don't worry about it. But mom was not a new mom. She had a very strong intuition, and she took her to another doctor. She had to wait 3 more months, hence 6 months old, to get a referral. And that's when they were told that this is actually the early stages of a rare childhood eye cancer called Retinoblastoma. And if she does not have surgery right away, she could die. So my right eye was surgically removed. 3 more months passed by. I was 9 months old when my right eye was surgically removed. And since then, I've been seeing in one eye. But now I define it as I have the photographer's eye, because it's so ironic though that it was a photograph that my mother took of me, and then she introduced me to a camera at age 5, and the camera had been my voice, my best friend, and I later made it a career. So I have the photographer's eye, and that's just the start of my life.
That's so amazing. And you have to tell me, what is the survival rate of retinoblastoma? Because my husband's a doctor, and when I told him, he was in shock. Because you tell me, what is the survival rate?
Right. So now, thanks to technology improving all the time, now the survival rate is 95%. But at the time that I was diagnosed in the 1990s, the survival rate was not past 5 years old, and definitely not in the 90s. So for me to I've also mentioned in the book, I've also been blessed to meet others who have the same exact cancer that I have, who are no longer living to this day. So the fact that I am still around, the fact that I can still converse with you and see you and hear you is a testament of God. It is a blessing in disguise. So.
Absolutely. And because from what I understand it as well, sometimes it's spread to both eyes. And you are lucky that she caught it so early, and it was just one eye that had to be removed, and but you can still see with the other eye.
Exactly. I am blessed to have 20/20 vision in my other eye, but there are plenty who were not so lucky. There are a handful of survivors that are of my age, and they don't have vision at all. And even some of them have to wear hearing aids because the cancer can spread, throughout the body, really. So that's why I still see doctors every now that the pandemic, annually I see doctors annually to make sure that it has not spread to the other eye, to other parts of the body. But yeah, most of the survivors that I know of, especially in Facebook groups now, my mom spent time as a mentor to some of the parents who are just now going through it all over again. So most of them unfortunately have lost both visions, vision in both eyes. So.
And for you, because of your radiation, you also lost hearing in your right ear, if I'm not mistaken?
Both ears.
Both ears. Okay,
yeah.
So you use hearing aids for both ears?
Yes, I use hearing aids for both ears. But the blessing also is that without hearing aids, I can still hear in a way.
Right.
Not comprehend fully, but I can still hear. But I'm also I was learning the skills of being a lip reader too. So that's also how I interacted with friends and family. If my hearing aids were out, so just reading lips, or people learned how to turn on and off lights if I was not paying attention. Thank goodness for phones, so I can text message now. So, yeah.
No, and I think if you could define for those who are listening and seeing you as well, those who are not aware, because a lot of people have this perception that if you're blind and if you can't hear, that it's completely, there's no vision and there's no hearing, but that's not true.
No, and I'm glad you asked this question. Let me find a way to give an analogy that makes sense. So when you lose your vision, think of it. So, losing your vision and losing your hearing are two different things. Even though the ear and the nose and the throat are all connected, they're two different things. So think of it as when you lose your vision, you lose one hand, but when you lose your hearing, you lose one leg, right? So it's like, you can still operate. Like if you lose your vision, you can still hear. If you lose your hearing, you can still see. So it's just some people. There are different definitions as well. They're deafblind, hard of hearing, visually impaired. Now, for me, throughout my life, and also, for governmental and doctor purposes, I was more so hard of hearing and visually impaired. But the older I got, the more I was okay with defining myself as deafblind, because combining, I do have hearing loss, I do have vision loss. So there's different terminologies as far as how to define it. But no, just think of it as one of your joints or your limbs is not working. Doesn't mean that everything else doesn't work.
Right. And I'm so glad that you explained it so thoroughly, because I think a lot of people have, same movie stereotypes that you have when you think of somebody who is blind. because there's a definition of blind and legally blind, and a definition of being deaf, and there's so many levels of it. So I think people need to be more aware of that and be able to learn more about these things. And you define the camera as being your, I guess, mode of expression, your primary mode of expression since you were 5 years old. Did you ever have the inkling that how can I do this? Or it was just, it just never occurred to you that that this could be a problem for you?
Well, it never did occur to me that I could actually make it a career. It never did. It was just one of those things where, when you're between the ages of 5 to 13, when you find something that you really, really like, you stick with it, right?
Right.
But I also vividly remember in middle school, we actually, again, this is the blessing of technology. In one of our classes, we could actually take those personality quizzes to see what careers are really good for us.
Right.
And every quiz I took said, you need to do something creative. And so it wasn't until, I think, high school or entering high school, because I went to technical high school, so they kind of train you a little differently on what do you want to do when you leave here. So that's when I realized, okay, there's journalism, there's photography, there's videography, there's cinematography. That's when I started to learn, I could actually do this for a living. So no, a camera as a child was just, like you said, my means of expression, because I have older siblings, but because they're like twice my age, I didn't grow up with them. So I needed a way to interact with people, converse. So it was just one of those things of, I was blessed to find my purpose at such a young age. So
I think that's fantastic. And you have to define, because I do photography, so I know what you're talking about, but you have to define what is the photographer's eye, because a lot of people don't think about it, but it's true. What you said, it was true.
So maybe more people won't think about it now because the devices now,
it's different.
Matter, right?
It's different. Yes.
So I say that because, once again, my first cameras were the ones where you had to take to the convenience store, which means you look through one little viewfinder, one little view. You have one small shot to see if you took a good photo or not. And a little tooting of the horn. Every photo that I did take, 99% of the time, the photos that I did take before smartphone were like really good. So that's also another sign of how I knew that it could be something. So yeah, before your smartphone, before the cameras where you see everything in the back, you literally had to look through a small viewfinder and squint. Most people have to squint with one eye. And so me, I don't have to do that.
So. And that's so fantastic because a lot of people have the perception, you have a disability, now what? It's sort of like the pity thing, and I hate that. But I'm going to ask you the question, at one point, if there was any point at all growing up, what was the hardest part of not being able to see with one eye and having hearing loss?
I think the first example that comes to mind with that question is my hand-eye coordination when it came to sports, right? So I think most people don't realize that too. That's kind of how you know that things are connected. All your joints are connected. So I love sports. I love running. I love swimming. I love any sport that involves just moving my body. But when it came to sports like basketball, football, flag football, I had to be extra careful because if I did not, because I can't see over here, and also because I wear hearing aids, if I don't see or hear the ball coming my way, that's an injury right there. So that's the first example that comes up with me. But I think the other example is just because of also the lack of understanding, I was prone to bullying in that way because people just did not understand, like, how can you see me and not see me, and you look like you have 4 eyes, and all of those unfortunate things. But it just, those are the first two things that came to my mind. The limit kind of to what sports I could participate in, and then the limit to the understanding of other people, how I even operate.
But you have to tell me, and I read in your book that you liked driving. You have to tell me. I mean, I just like because again, we're so limited in our perceptions. But you have to tell me how you, because you do drive and you like to drive and you like your cars, you know, you like a fast car. So how did you like customize your car? Did you like, I don't know, what's the term called? You know, like do something extra with it that, you know, to help you out in your driving?
So kind of sort of yes, but another blessing is that the eye that I can see in is on the side that we drive
Right.
on. In
Right,
the
right.
US, you drive on the left side,
Left
and I
side.
can see in my left eye. So that kind of makes it easier, but also yes, I have blind spot mirrors. I have
Ah, I
blind spot
see.
mirrors on my car.
Right, right.
But also because when I was learning how to drive, I learned how to drive on what they call hoopties, right? So
Mhm.
before you had mirrors that you could adjust, you literally had to look behind you,
Right, right, right.
look
Yeah.
and see where you're going. So technology is amazing in the sense of first I started out driving where you had to literally look where you're going,
Uh-huh.
and then my first car was blind spot mirrors and automatic mirrors. But
Right,
then I've been in rental cars where um, so everything's automatic. Like it will beep if a
right,
car is next to you. It
right,
will
right.
adjust to your height. So
Right, right.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
that's definitely a blessing. I mean, even like under normal circumstances, because when people are not really looking where they're going. So, but you know, I think it's incredible. And the other thing, I think you could you tell us about a little bit of your family background? I mean, were your parents from the U.S. or is your extended family from the U.S.?
Yes, so I am full on African American. But
Mm,
I also maybe wind a little bit of my maternal grandfather is from the Virgin Islands, so he's from the
mm,
Caribbean.
mm-hmm.
And then as I also learned my ancestry on my dad's side, since unfortunately not all African Americans have the opportunity to learn that,
Right.
I also learned that I am Cherokee Native American on my
Oh,
dad's side.
wow.
So, but for the most part, I am African American,
Mm-hmm.
and my parents converted to
Okay.
Islam. So my
Mm-hmm.
mom converted individually before she even met my dad, and then they came together and actually converted. So because it was just them that converted,
Mm.
it's kind of an interesting energy, I guess, between my older siblings because they didn't grow up in the same religion as me.
Right.
So they have the understanding of it, but that's
Right.
as far as it goes. You know, that's not we spend holiday together, but that's a different holiday. You know,
Right.
so
Right.
yeah.
That again, it's all part of, you know, everybody has such a different story. But tell me, and I was reading this in your book, it was not just your disability that used to often pop up for you. It was because you were African American. Could you, you know, define that first before I go into any other question? You know, how was it hard for you as an African American with a disability? What were the major, I guess, hurdles for you because of that?
So I think the biggest thing is, I guess, just all the stereotypes of
Hmm.
simply being African American. And on top of that, I was blessed to have a really good education.
Hmm.
But because I had a really good education, that meant I was the only one or one of few.
Hmm.
So most of the time that was challenging because I had to also, well, this was back before I even knew who or could be able to say who I was, you know, as a
Right.
person or understood why
Right.
I was the way that I was. I was just known to be different. And in a way, I was kind of popular in school because I was so different. They're like, this girl, she's so nice, but she's so different. And I just want to just, you know,
You're
da da
right.
da da, right? So I think that was just the hardest part of I was always one of few that
Hmm.
looked like me, and not
Right.
just skin wise, not
Right.
just religiously, but also because of the different ability,
Right.
just being different all around. So
Right. And the thing is, did you ever feel alone because of that? I mean, I think I could ask for both things. That did you ever feel alone because A, you were African American, and B, you were Muslim as well?
yes, a lot of times. a lot of times. So alone that my best friend growing up, honestly, were music in my journal. So I was always just, and then my parents, understandably, they were always working. Obviously, I have medical expenses, so they were always working. And once again, I was technically an only child, so. I did often feel alone, and it really just took me to becoming an adult and operating on my own to know that one is a good thing, because I was so alone that I like now as an adult, I'm more confident in myself as a woman than most women are at my age.
Right.
It's like
you've traveled the world, Zaakirah. That's you have been, and you said this in your book that you hear this a lot, that you've been to more countries than a lot of other people that you know. So please tell us, where have you been? And most of these places you've been with certain groups, but you've made a lot of these journeys alone as well.
Yeah, so I think at this point it has been half and half. It's half groups and half like by myself, but maybe meeting up with groups later on.
Right.
So yeah, I've been blessed to go to 10 countries. And the first few were with groups. Actually, my very first out-of-country trip was with a group that the other group members were deaf or hard of hearing, or they just were interested in learning the culture. So that was a great intro to stepping outside of my own comfort zone, because before that I was so afraid of things going wrong that I just would not leave the country. And after that, there's afraid that that something like once the travel bug bites you, you're gonna travel regardless. So then came, I think, maybe 2 more group trips before I actually went solo. And solo for me was never fully I was never fully on my own, because thanks to technology, I would meet up with, someone, or I would stay with, a family. So most of my trips, most of them have been in Africa, mostly West Africa, and I did get to go to South Africa for a couple of weeks. And then I've been to 3 countries in Europe and 1 country in South America, and in the Caribbean. I've been to a couple in the Caribbean too. So I've literally had a taste of almost all the different cultures. So that's been a blessing, so.
And what was your favorite place to go to? I mean, I'm just jealous that you were able to go, but you have to tell us, what was your favorite place to go to? Because I've seen the pictures, Zaakirah. The pictures are amazing. I mean, I'll post up a link to your website in the show notes, that everybody can see the pictures you've taken, and I absolutely love them. But you have to tell us which was the favorite place to go.
Oh, that's so hard, because there is a part in the book that I'm not afraid of talking about, because it was already put out there in the book. But I was married at one point, and his family was beautiful and the country was beautiful. He's from the country of the Gambia. And, that country was beautiful. And because the family was so beautiful, they're like, this is always going to be your home, no matter what. Even after, we were no longer married, they were the same.
Oh, that's
they
so
said
sweet.
The same thing. So that's one of my favorite countries. But what my other favorite country was actually South Africa. Because I love learning a new language, but I also love knowing that I can speak English, read the menu, the whole bit. So I enjoyed that about South Africa, and it seemed to be a common thread also of it. Reminded me a little bit of Los Angeles, California, in the sense of, you want to go up the mountain, you can go up the mountain. You want to come back down and get into the beach, go for it, because it's literally all in one. So it was beautiful, it was modern, it was photogenic, it was full of other creatives as well. There are a lot of other African Americans, I would say, who have left the U.S. and decided to be there. And it's one of those, well, I don't know about now in 2020, but before 2020, there are a lot of countries where you could just spend 3 months only on a visa. You don't need, you don't need a visa. You can spend 3 months simply just being in a country. So, countries like that are also fun to fully immerse, in that culture. So I think that's why I like South Africa a lot.
Wow. So, I mean, that's fantastic. And I'm going to get into your photography a little later, but I think one of the most key questions I have is, and again, I think I may be coming back to this a little too many times, but you have to tell us, because you have a very unique perspective because of who you are in your totality. You're Muslim, you're African American, and you are deafblind. You have to tell me that being a Muslim, what were some of the fondest things for you, but what were the things that you felt like being a Muslim in your totality that sort of was not the most positive experience for you?
I guess I would say I'm glad we're having a conversation, right? Because it's all about educating. And
Right.
I'll be honest, fortunately and unfortunately, it was a lot of the Middle Easterns that I had trouble with, because maybe also there's just the lack of understanding that the religion of Islam means peace, and it is a very international religion.
Right.
Just because there were people who choose to convert to the religion versus growing up in a country that's full of it doesn't make us any less than.
Right.
And unfortunately, that was the energy I always got growing up. And so, I mean, yeah, that's the energy I always got growing up from all Middle Easterners. That just because they didn't have to experience slavery or apartheid or things that we go through made them act like that they were less than, that we're less than. So I think that was the hardest part, because I didn't grow up that way. I grew up to know that my mom, again, being part Caribbean, she loves Bob Marley, and one of Bob Marley's most famous quotes is "Love is my religion." Right. So I grew up operating under that. So I think that was challenging. It's like, hey, I love you for the sake of God. Why are you, looking at me left?
Right. I hate to even have to, but yeah, that is unfortunately how it is, Zaakirah. But you had also mentioned something else in your book. You grew up in all different cities. You grew up in Tennessee, you grew up in Georgia. What was it like when you were around non-Muslims and you were Muslim and African American, and also that you, again, deafblind?
I feel like for me, the first real taste of independence or maybe culture shock honestly started on one of my trips. So when I was in Ghana, that was really my first time exploring my spirituality, because similar to the U.S., Ghana has parts that are predominantly Christian and parts that are predominantly Muslim. So I was blessed to go to both. And so whenever I went to the parts that were predominantly Muslim, it was a true test of how Muslim are you, So I think even when I was living on my own, because I also lived in Maryland, so I literally have family up and down the East Coast. So when I moved to Maryland, I was actually close to my dad's side of family, which also was not mainly Muslim. So it was a true testament of how serious are you about your faith.
That's
because that was really also my reminder of I'm a part of so many different cultures. Like I actually am African American, so why can't I participate in African American cultural norms? And then, but yeah, okay, I'm also Muslim, so let me go ahead and participate in the Muslim festivities. So I think it was just just a true testament of spirituality, which really, I have no regrets. It helped me to shape into the woman that I am today.
Right. And you're a fantastic woman, Zaakirah. And I'm going to go into your professional, I guess, career. And you don't have one career, Zaakirah. And I'm just sitting through the book and I'm like, oh my God, you're into so many things. And I'm like, I feel a little embarrassed. I'm like, I haven't even done half the things you've done, Zaakirah. But I know it brings me so much joy that you've done all of these things. It's not just photography. Photography is your main gig. That's how it is, how we define it. It's your main gig. But you've got a lot of gigs, and you sort of fell into so many gigs. You're better at this. You'll have to tell us, what is it that you do in photography and everything else that you do?
Yes. So, like you said, I'm a photographer first. That's how people know me.
Mm.
That's how I discover my purpose. That's what it's going to be. But then as once I officially became a photographer and made my first sale, I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur now. Like, I have to have some kind of business hat on. I don't know anything about it, but I have to wear some kind of business hat.
Right.
So that's when I taught myself Facebook pages was just coming out. So I literally had to teach myself. I was already on it, having conversations with my high school friends in the game because I moved around so much from my other high school, right? So I was already on Facebook just for fun. So then I had to teach myself how to use Facebook to promote my own business.
Right.
And so once I got that down pat, I've always been a fond believer in each one, teach one. So then my first actual social media marketing client was actually a friend of mine who was a singer. And so I'm like, hey, you need to be using Facebook pages because you could get more listeners for your music.
Right.
And so she was like, I don't know nothing about that. I trust you to create it for me, run it for me. So that's how I got into social media, just teaching others how to do social media. But then, all of it, I feel it just going back to the fact that I'm a creative at heart, right? So then I get into videos, and then at one point when I did continue my education in photography, we had one course in videography, and that's all I needed because I spent that next year producing, directing, editing, filming documentaries, right?
Right.
So then I learned how to, do all that. And so what became easy for me, I guess skipping over to the other creative thing that I do is writing. Before the book came out, I love writing because apparently I had a knack for storytelling.
Because
so
your
not
mom
only
does
do I
too.
visually,
Because I read, yes, you got it from your mom.
I did. So yeah, I got it from her genetically, but then of course, I also learned from her because she was so transparent. But yeah, so by the time I actually start writing for myself, I write the stories of this is how my travel went today. That's actually how I started writing. And so then I started writing for other blogs, other articles.
Right.
And then came the world of podcasting. So podcasting was literally it's the audio version of writing a blog or the audio version of doing a video.
Right.
And so for me, that came with ease because I already had the skills of being a blogger, because I already had the skills of being a filmmaker. So it's just the only difference was it's just audio. Well, now we're going back to a little bit of including video, but for the most part, it was just audio. And so I was still able to maintain my love of people, my love of creating, and just having a podcast of still just right now my theme is interviewing other women of purpose who have stories of resilience, of overcoming adversity, that nitty-gritty into how you got to where you are today.
Right.
So all of it, I think, really just intertwined because I've always been, because I'm so used to quiet time, if that makes sense. My intuition is pretty strong. So I try to, always stay on the path of what I am meant to be doing. And it just always happen to be creative and inspiring people to step outside of their comfort zone. So.
Yeah, it's not, and for you, it's not just one thing. That's the incredible part about it. It's not just photography, and it's not even just one kind of photography. I remember that you did you do portrait photography, but you've also done photography at music festivals, and your travel photography, which I've also seen. And then you have your social media managing, and you also have your own marketing company. And it's fantastic that you reach out into so many avenues. It's absolutely so great that you can just, like, I guess, just break all those, like, I think all of us exist in a box. That's the problem with all of us, that we're all existing in a box and we're unable to sort of escape that box. But you're escaping all the boxes. So I think that's so great, Zaakirah. And I'm filled with joy having you as my very first guest. And thank you so much for being here with me. And please do tell our listeners and our viewers about your photography website, your podcast as well, and any other social media outlets that you have.
Perfect. Yes. No, thank you for having me. I'm glad we've been able to have the conversations that are hard to have and that need to have. So
Yes.
thank you for the opportunity. Everywhere on social media, you can find me personally at Illuminous One, which is actually the meaning of my middle name. My middle name is Nayar, and it actually means luminous in Arabic. So Illuminous One is me on social media. And my main website for my personal brand also is ZaakirahNayar.com. I feel like that's easy to say. That's why I chose that. But then, from ZaakirahNayar.com, you can find my podcast, which is called the Living Legacy Podcast, or just go straight to wherever you love to listen to podcasts. At this point, I believe it's everywhere, and which is exciting. And I can't wait for you all to hear it. And then you can also find my photography services. The photography is actually called Nayar Photography. So you can find my photography photos there. You can check out some of my travel, music, people photography. And then last but not least, I actually did start to incorporate not only my love for music and photography and marketing in one, but also to give other women the opportunity to help to bridge that pay gap, that unfortunate gap between men and women in the technology, marketing, advertising world. So I started a marketing agency called Focus Media Group, and that's with a PH, because again, on a play of the word photography. So focusmediagroup.com, you can find out about how we can help you to grow your Instagram, or help you to find your brand, or even just be a business consultant if you have that idea in mind, but you don't know how to execute it and bring it to fruition. So that's where you can find me. Oh, and my book, of course, you can find my book on my website too.
Yes.
Support independent authors by purchasing the paperback, but it is also on Audible and Amazon as well.
Yes. One more time, the name of your book.
Yes. Seeing Life Through a Different Lens by Zaakirah Muhammad.
Yes. And before we leave, Zaakirah, please, if you have one solid piece of advice, is a bad thing, but I guess what you've learned from your life experiences, what is it that you would want other people to know from your perspective?
I think I definitely want to say to step outside of your comfort zone, step outside of that box, the box that you grew up in, the box that your parents or your siblings put you in. Step outside of that. 2020 has definitely been a year for me to step outside of it even more, and I just hope you do the same thing. We have plenty of time left in the year to do that. So.
Thank you so much, Zaakirah, and thank you so much for being with me. And for everybody who's listening and seeing me for the first time, thank you for putting up with my face. But you all take care of yourself, and may peace be on you all.